Let's take a listen to Nate Tibbetts.
Off seasons, we've tried to get DB to come back to Phoenix, and so we've been able to build a relationship a little bit. Unfortunately, she didn't pick us twice. Third time is a charm.
The WNBA has been shaken, and the current turmoil revolves around DeWanna Bonner and her startling connection to what many are calling one of the most significant tampering scandals in the league's history. In a recent interview, Phoenix Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts effectively admitted to recruiting Bonner while she was still contractually obligated to the Indiana Fever. This is not just a controversial move, it is potentially against WNBA regulation. To make matters worse, Bonner's furious reaction upon hearing Tibbetts' comments sent tremors through the community of players, fans, and the sport itself. The emerging story is not simply about allegiance, it's about manipulation, clandestine agreements, and the difficult reality of how some players are acquired. How extensive is this situation, and could it lead to a league-wide inquiry? Let's analyze how this tampering bombshell exploded and what it signifies for the WNBA's integrity.
Unfortunately, she didn't pick us twice. Third time is a charm. I mean, well, yeah, obviously, when there was a way, of recruiting her while she was on another team. They admitted to recruiting her while she was on the Fever. It was like, oh, she picked us while she played for another team.
I think AT helped in that a little bit.
I think AT helped a lot. And that's one of the weird things is like when players are in relationships, you can't really police conversations between partners. And if nothing else, even if it wasn't pushed, AT would have at least convinced her to join.
It all began with a single casual statement that rapidly descended into chaos. During a post-game press conference, Phoenix Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts was discussing his team's offseason acquisitions when he made a seemingly harmless remark until fans grasped what he had just disclosed. In front of the media, Tibbetts acknowledged that the Mercury had been working to foster a relationship with DeWanna Bonner, even when she was still under contract with the Indiana Fever. He added that it was their third try at bringing her back to Phoenix, quipping that the third time's the charm. While his words might have seemed lighthearted, to anyone versed in WNBA rules, they were a major red flag. Tampering, which involves communicating with players contracted to another team, is strictly forbidden, and Nate Tibbetts didn't just suggest it, he practically confirmed it. Fans immediately re-examined the clip, analyzing every word. The moment Tibbetts stated they had been trying to get Bonner for some time, social media erupted. A flood of comments accused the Mercury of gaming the system, using personal connections for recruitment, and showing disrespect to the Fever organization. Others noted that Bonner's partner, Alyssa Thomas, is a current player for Phoenix, which made the relationship Tibbetts mentioned even more suspect. This was not a mere slip of the tongue, it was a confession of behind-the-scenes coordination. Within hours, clips from the press conference were circulating on platforms like X and TikTok, igniting outrage among fans who already felt certain WNBA teams get preferential treatment. Many contended that smaller market teams like the Fever are persistently disadvantaged, while prominent franchises such as Phoenix are allowed to bend the rule. Others took it a step further, demanding an immediate league investigation into Tibbetts' statements and the possible tampering violation. However, the most stunning development came from Bonner herself. After learning of the comments, she was reportedly enraged, not only by the implication, but because Tibbetts' thoughtless words made her appear complicit in an unethical act. Sources close to her claimed Bonner felt humiliated and exposed, believing Tibbetts had portrayed her as someone who disrespected her former team. She had dedicated herself to building a reputation as a veteran leader, and that image was now being dismantled in public. The Fever were also taken by surprise. Although the organization did not issue a public statement right away, insiders said there was immense frustration over how the events transpired. The team had already faced criticism from fans following Bonner's abrupt departure earlier in the season, and now it appeared the rumors of unofficial recruitment were confirmed by the Mercury's own coach. What started as a routine post-game interview had become a public relations nightmare, raising serious questions about the league's integrity and the fuzzy boundary between personal and professional connections. But the situation truly escalated escalated when fans began to piece together the hidden timeline of Bonner's move, connecting details that suggested a much more troubling scenario. When Nate Tibbetts made his remark, most dismissed it as typical coach speak until the complete video emerged. In it, he candidly said the Mercury had been trying to get DeWanna back to Phoenix for a while. That was the moment of shock. In plain terms, he was describing tampering, not standard recruitment. Coaches and team personnel are forbidden from discussing or approaching players who are under contract with other teams. Regardless of how pure the intentions might seem, the casual nature of Tibbetts' admission only worsened the situation. He wasn't speaking in hushed tones, he was boasting as if the league's regulations did not concern him.
So yeah, I mean, just wanting her to end her run, however, it's going to end, right? I mean, what a story for her to come back after playing here for 10 years. And you never know for sure how it's going to work, right? But we knew that we needed to add another veteran to our group for these situations.
We knew we needed to add another veteran, so we got our best player to convince her, I don't know if they're married yet, partner, to quit on her team so we could bring her in as a vet. Like that is what happened. Like, you're hearing it from Nate Tibbetts talking about,
The video went viral quickly, and soon the word tampering was trending across WNBA social media. Analysts began to investigate the timeline, assembling the sequence of events. Reports surfaced that while with the Fever, Bonner had turned down several trade offers and shortly after asked to leave the team. This decision had puzzled fans at the time, given her existing contract. But with Tibbetts' admission now public, people started to wonder if her departure was part of a pre-planned scheme to reunite with Alyssa Thomas in Phoenix. The league community buzzed with speculation. Had this been quietly arranged months in advance? Did Bonner know she was leaving Indiana long before the official announcement? And critically, what did the Mercury's front office know? The more it was analyzed, the more problematic it seemed. The notion that a veteran coach would so brazenly admit to unofficial recruitment struck a chord. This was no longer just about WW1 Bonner, it was about the reputation of a league already striving for greater respect. Meanwhile, Bonner's reaction was intensely angry. Sources close to her reported she was furious, feeling betrayed by a coach who failed to be discreet. She had always valued her professionalism, but now her name was linked to clandestine deals and questionable arrangements. Fans who once admired her leadership started to doubt her integrity, which was a painful blow. For an athlete who had spent over a decade crafting her legacy, the consequences of one coach's careless remark were devastating. Throughout the league, talk of penalties and investigations intensified. Journalists sought a statement from the WNBA, but the lack of response only fed the controversy. Fans called for accountability, noting that similar tampering in the NBA would have resulted in fines, suspensions, or more severe actions. The harm was done. The public had heard the confession. The proof was available, and DeWanna Bonner's anger was palpable. Just as the outrage seemed to have peaked, new information suggested the scandal was even more extensive than previously thought. Once the video of Nate Tibbetts circulated, fans and analysts started to review the events leading to DeWanna Bonner's contentious transfer. They discovered a pattern that made the entire situation look even more dubious. The sequence of events didn't just hint at tampering, it practically confirmed it. It began in late January when Bonner unexpectedly signed with the Indiana Fever. At the time, many questioned the decision, as her long-term partner Alyssa Thomas had just been traded to Phoenix. Rumors circulated that Bonner's tenure in Indiana might be brief, but no one foresaw it unraveling so rapidly. Just weeks into her time with the Fever, Bonner began to show clear signs of frustration. Her playing time decreased, her performance waned, and insiders claimed she appeared disengaged. Then reports emerged that she had rejected multiple trade offers that would have placed her in competitive environments, a peculiar choice for a veteran still aiming for a championship. By mid-season, the situation came to a head. Bonner suddenly declared she would no longer play for the Fever, a move that stunned fans and teammates. A week later, she was put on waivers.
like, she made the decision she was going to Phoenix while she was still under contract by the Indiana Fever. Why we knew that? Because teams were told to not claim her off waivers. Why we knew that? Because she blocked every single trade. Every trade that was offered to DeWanna Bonner by the Indiana Fever, as was reported, DeWanna Bonner blocked. Her agent blocked it.
What happened next was truly strange. Normally, a player of Bonner's stature would be claimed by multiple teams wanting to add veteran experience. This time, however, no one claimed her, not even teams with the available salary cap space. Instead, rumors began to spread that teams had been advised against it, as if her destination was already decided. Phoenix. When Nate Tibbetts later commented, "We've tried to get DeWanna back before, but third time's the charm," it was clear this was no coincidence. It appeared to be a prearranged outcome. Phoenix had an ideal situation. Alyssa Thomas was on the team, they needed another veteran player, and Bonner had a history with the franchise she had once led to success. But if this was the plan from the start, the question was when it began. Fans pointed out that Bonner and Thomas had been seen in Phoenix during the offseason, suggesting that reunion discussions might have been happening privately for months. The theory that her signing with Indiana was merely a temporary stop to secure a final large contract started to gain momentum. When this speculation hit social media, the backlash was intense. People accused the Mercury of unethical practices and Bonner of violating the Fever's trust. The narrative had evolved from curiosity to indignation. The evidence wasn't concealed in secret texts or leaked files. It was in plain sight. The converging timelines, the rejected trades, and Tibbetts' own admission told the story. Fans were no longer demanding speculation. They were demanding justice. As the calls for an investigation intensified, it was evident this controversy was just getting started. The next question was simple. How would the league react when one of its teams was caught in the act?
He's admitting to tampering. Like, not admitting to tampering, but what he's saying, when you actually know the backstory and you take into account what he's saying, he's essentially said, we decided during the season, early in the season, we wanted another veteran, but we didn't want to trade for another veteran. So, he said Alyssa Thomas helped. So we got our best player to convince her partner to quit on her team or to find a way to get here and become that vet, to join us as the vet. And the only way she could join us as the vet is by refusing all trades, quitting on or making the Fever waive her, and then making sure no teams claimed her off waivers.
When DeWanna Bonner learned of Nate Tibbetts' comments, those around her said she was beyond annoyed. She was genuinely enraged. For a player who had spent more than a decade building a respected career in the WNBA, this was more than just a careless remark. It was a direct assault on her reputation. Bonner has always valued professionalism and loyalty, even amid team changes and personal difficulties. So, to hear her own coach casually admit to what seemed like tampering while she was under contract with another team felt like a betrayal. It made her appear to be a willing participant in something she insisted she had no part in. According to reports, Bonner immediately reached out to her agent to get clarification on what was said. Within hours, her representatives issued discreet but firm statements behind the scenes, asserting that she had made her choice independently, free from any influence from the Phoenix staff. But by that point, the clip had already gone viral, and the public damage was done. Fans had formed their own conclusions. Many viewed Bonner not as an innocent party, but as a willing collaborator in a dubious backroom deal. The atmosphere in the Phoenix locker room grew strained. Sources indicated that things became uncomfortable, with players discussing the scandal and increased media presence at practices. Some teammates came to Bonner's defense, arguing she was being unfairly implicated in a narrative spun from one man's thoughtless words. Others quietly wondered if there was more to the story. After all, the strong bond between Bonner and Alyssa Thomas was evident, and that relationship had always made Phoenix an attractive option. But what truly angered Bonner wasn't the speculation, it was being labeled a quitter. The transcript of Tibbetts' interview suggested she had simply abandoned Indiana for the comfort of Phoenix. That portrayal infuriated her. She had taken the Fever contract for family reasons, not for prestige. Her children were close by, and she had a genuine desire to help the young team develop. The implication that she left them due to disinterest or scheming felt like a personal insult. For Bonner, this was a public humiliation, not just a misunderstanding. Privately, she reportedly confronted Tibbetts, insisting he take responsibility for his comments. The conversation was described as tense, and some insiders claim Bonner threatened to speak out publicly if the organization didn't provide a clarification. However, Phoenix remained silent, likely hoping the issue would blow over. Instead, their silence made her appear more culpable. The entire situation backed Bonner into a difficult position, forcing her to choose between defending her reputation and remaining loyal to a team now facing scrutiny. In the public eye, her previously spotless image was now blemished. What started as a coach's careless statement had evolved into a major crisis of trust, one that could shape not only the final stage of her career, but also the WNBA's stance on ethics and player integrity. As the controversy spread online, the WNBA's official communication channels remained silent. Days went by without any statement, clarification, or disciplinary measures against Nate Tibbetts or the Phoenix Mercury. This silence was more telling than any press release. To fans, it seemed the league was attempting to ignore the problem. In an age where transparency is crucial, this approach backfired immediately. Fans inundated the league's social media with demands for answers. Hashtags like #JohnInvestigateMercury and TamperingGate started to trend, with numerous clips of Tibbetts' interview being shared alongside irate commentary. WNBA followers, from longtime supporters to new fans drawn in by the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, were united in their anger. Many accused the league of favoritism, protecting certain franchises while overlooking clear rule violations. If this were the NBA, fines would have been issued by now. One popular post declared. Others highlighted that smaller market teams like the Indiana Fever consistently seem to be at a disadvantage, while powerful franchises like Phoenix appeared to operate with immunity. The media soon joined the discussion. Independent sports analysts and YouTube personalities meticulously broke down the entire affair, replaying the interview and highlighting connections that pointed to long-term coordination. Many emphasized that tampering is not a minor infraction, but a serious issue of integrity that can disrupt the league's competitive balance. If coaches or players can arrange deals behind the scenes, it undermines the principles the league purports to uphold. Suddenly, the scandal was no longer about a single player. It was a test of the WNBA's credibility, yet the league office remained quiet. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's refusal to comment attracted even more severe criticism. Fans accused her of selective enforcement, pointing to instances where players were fined or suspended for much less serious offenses, while a direct admission of tampering went unaddressed. The perception of bias grew, and the conversation shifted from outrage to cynicism. People began to wonder if the WNBA was truly committed to professional standards, or if it was willing to sacrifice ethics to protect its public image. Meanwhile, the Indiana Fever organization reportedly felt completely blindsided. Behind the scenes, executives were said to be furious, feeling that Bonner's departure and Tibbetts' remarks had made them appear weak and foolish. Some within the Fever organization allegedly urged the league to intervene, contending that if such behavior were not punished, no player contract would ever be secure. Despite the mounting pressure, the WNBA headquarters remained silent. This leadership void allowed the story to develop a life of its own. Every fan-made video, podcast, and article added new layers of speculation, from secret text messages to hidden financial incentive. As days passed without an official response, the public narrative solidified into a dangerous perception that the WNBA plays favorites. Whether or not this is true, perception matters. The longer the silence persisted, the more the league's integrity eroded in the eyes of its fans. As the outrage intensified, the pressure on the WNBA to take action became unavoidable. Sports networks started to feature segments on the controversy, describing the league's silence as deafening. ESPN analysts questioned how Nate Tibbetts could openly admit to tampering in a public interview without any repercussions. Some drew parallels to NBA tampering cases, where coaches and executives faced fines of hundreds of thousands of dollars for much less. The message was unmistakable. If the WNBA wants to be taken seriously, it must enforce its own rules. Independent media also weighed in. YouTube channels, podcasts, and even former players began to analyze every aspect of the situation. A viral video titled "Phoenix Mercury Just Exposed the WNBA's Biggest Scandal" garnered millions of views in just a few days. Commentators accused the league of applying double standards and showing favoritism, penalizing some players for emotional outbursts or minor infractions, while ignoring an issue that goes to the core of competitive integrity. They pointed to Tibbetts' confident tone, stressing that his "third time's the charm" remark was not just careless, it was arrogant. It suggested he believed the Mercury could operate without consequences. Fans started to demand more than just words. Online petitions called for the WNBA to launch a formal investigation into Phoenix's actions. Some demanded that Tibbets be fined or suspended, while others argued the team should forfeit draft picks for violating the rule. Hashtags like Jen hold them accountable and Justice for Fever became prominent on social media. Even players began liking posts that hinted at frustration with how the league was handling the issue. It became apparent that this was not merely a fan-driven conspiracy. People within the league were quietly acknowledging that something was amiss. The growing tension also began to impact the Mercury's reputation. Opposing fans booed during games and held signs referencing the scandal. "Third time's the crime," one sign read. Observers noted Bonner's body language appeared distant and frustrated, and she seemed visibly uncomfortable when the topic was raised. The story showed no signs of disappearing. Every press conference brought fresh questions about an investigation that had yet to begin. By the end of the week, national media outlets had picked up the story. The New York Times published a column questioning if the WNBA was mature enough to handle its own scandals with transparency. Others speculated that NBA Commissioner Adam Silver might need to intervene if the WNBA continued to evade responsibility. This suggestion sparked even more debate. Would the NBA really need to step in to restore credibility to the women's league? The backlash had officially broken out of the WNBA community. What started as a single thoughtless comment had escalated into a major public relations crisis, threatening the public's trust in the league. And while fans demanded answers, insiders whispered that something much larger might be happening behind the scenes, that the league's silence was not due to incompetence, but was a form of protection. The real question now was, who were they protecting? As days turned into weeks with no official word from the WNBA front office, fans began to formulate their own theories, and the conclusions they reached were more explosive than anyone had anticipated. The silence didn't just feel odd, it seemed intentional. Many came to believe the league was purposefully protecting Phoenix and Nate Tibbets from repercussions. The reason? The Mercury are not just any team, they are a cornerstone franchise of the WNBA, home to legendary players, major sponsorships, and some of the league's most recognizable stars. An officially acknowledged scandal of this magnitude could undermine the fragile image of progress the WNBA had cultivated over recent years. Online forums started connecting the pieces. Fans found that around the time Bonner left the Indiana Fever, Phoenix had made quiet adjustments to its salary cap, creating just enough room to sign her weeks later. To many, this looked like coordination, not coincidence. Some theorized that Alyssa Thomas, Bonner's partner, had served as an informal link between the two parties during the season, allowing Phoenix to monitor Bonner's growing unhappiness in Indiana. This revelation caused a social media frenzy, with users labeling it relationship-driven recruitment and accusing the league of ignoring the situation because penalizing an LGBTQ couple could be politically sensitive. Then came Phoenix's official statement, which was more damage control than a genuine response. The Mercury's public relations team issued a vague declaration, claiming the coach's remarks were misconstrued and that no rules had been broken. They maintained that Tibbets' comments were taken out of context, and that no direct communication took place while Bonner was under contract. But fans were not convinced. Clips of his exact words resurfaced on timelines, reminding everyone that the coach himself had clearly admitted the team had tried to build a relationship with Bonner long before she was available. Inside sources revealed that even some WNBA officials were frustrated with how the Mercury managed the situation. An anonymous executive informed reporters that Phoenix's denial was flimsy and that the organization's confidence stemmed from a belief that they would not face significant consequences. The implication was alarming. If the WNBA leadership was unwilling to enforce its own rules, what would prevent other teams from doing the same? For Bonner, the situation had become unbearable. Every interview was filled with questions about tampering and favoritism. The focus had shifted from her performance on the court to the scandal that enveloped it. Even her game began to suffer. She appeared distracted, uncertain, and visibly uneasy during press conferences. By this point, fans were not just calling for accountability, they were alleging a cover-up. The dominant theory was that the league was prioritizing its image over its integrity. And while Phoenix might have avoided official punishment for the time being, the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict, guilty. But what followed would escalate this controversy from bad to catastrophic, as even more prominent figures began to weigh in and demand answers. By the time the scandal reached its zenith, the public sentiment had moved from confusion to outrage, and finally to a call for action. Fans were no longer just angry, they wanted consequences. Nate Tibbetts, once lauded for his basketball acumen, had become the face of everything wrong with the WNBA's leadership. Hashtags like Gunfire Tibbetts and Clean Up the League dominated social media, but the backlash didn't end there. The demands for accountability now included Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, whose silence during the affair had become indefensible. Many believed her lack of transparency had escalated a simple controversy into a major crisis of credibility. Pressure mounted from every angle. Sports media outlets openly questioned if Engelbert had lost her grip on the situation. When reporters persistently sought comment from the league office, they were met with generic responses, or even worse, complete silence. This vacuum allowed conspiracy theories to flourish. Was Engelbert protecting Phoenix due to internal sponsorships? Was she concerned that punishing a high-profile coach would alienate players or trigger a public backlash? Regardless of the reason, her inaction had made her a part of the scandal itself. Then Adam Silver entered the picture. The NBA commissioner, who ultimately oversees the WNBA's operations, reportedly became aware of the situation after seeing the widespread criticism on social media. Multiple insiders claimed that Silver had privately voiced concerns, viewing the matter as a potential blemish on both leagues. If the WNBA could not govern itself fairly, it would cast a negative light on the entire basketball world. Shortly after, rumors surfaced that Silver's office had discreetly started to review the tampering allegations and the league's internal communications regarding the incident. The mere suggestion that the NBA might intervene sent shockwaves through the community. Meanwhile, players started to speak out. Some current and former stars expressed frustration with the apparent double standards. They questioned how the WNBA could fine athletes for emotional tweets, yet overlook a public admission of tampering from a head coach. Others advocated for a restructuring of league oversight, proposing that an external review might be the only way to restore trust. "You can't preach integrity and play favorites," one player anonymously told a reporter. The consequences were significant. Sponsors began to watch the story closely, with several indicating that their partnerships might be reconsidered if the controversy was not resolved soon. This kind of pressure finally seemed to spur the league into action. Reports emerged that internal meetings were being held to review organizational conduct and communication policies. But for many fans, this was too little too late. The harm was already done. By the end of the week, the WNBA was not just managing a public relations crisis, it was confronting a moment of reckoning. A veteran star's reputation was damaged, a respected coach's career was at risk, and the commissioner's leadership was on shaky ground. The only remaining question was whether Adam Silver would intervene before the league's silence caused irreparable damage to everything it had built. The DeWanna Bonner tampering saga revealed much more than a single careless statement. It exposed a league grappling with a lack of accountability. What started as a coach's casual comment evolved into a controversy that challenged the WNBA's integrity, transparency, and leadership. Nate Tibbetts' words did not just incriminate him, they unveiled a deeper culture of silence that fans were no longer prepared to tolerate. DeWanna Bonner's anger, the Fever's frustration, and the league's inaction became emblematic of a system showing cracks under the weight of its own hypocrisy. And while the WNBA may wish for the story to disappear, the damage is irreversible. Trust has been compromised, reputations are tarnished, and a bright spotlight is now fixed on the league's moral compass. Whether Adam Silver intervenes or not, one thing is certain: the WNBA cannot build its future on a foundation of integrity if it continues to bury its own scandal.